From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxton Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Supervisor Peters?
Here.
Supervisor Scribner?
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Maggard?
Here.
Supervisor Couch?
Here.
Supervisor Perez?
Okay, good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, January 22nd, 9 a.m. meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We'll begin today's meeting with the flag salute led by Supervisor David Couch. Following the Pledge of Allegiance, please remain standing for a moment of prayer, silence, or meditation, whichever you prefer.
Please stand. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, I'd like to call on Nick Cullen, Director of the Animal Services Department, to introduce our Pet of the Week.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
Who do we have here today?
This little shivering ball of fur is Cinnamon. Cinnamon, she's an older girl. She's about 10 years old. She came to us actually from a resident in Bakersfield who was getting up in years, and she just had way more dogs than she can handle. So we wanted to try and help her out and find placement for her dogs. And Cinnamon's one of them. So she's already spayed. She's ready to go to her new home. She's, like I said, about 10 years old, super friendly, very relaxed, going to make somebody a good couch potato companion.
Absolutely. Well, she's a little nervous, but she seems like a sweetheart.
Yeah, she's going to make somebody a good life connection there.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thanks for bringing her down, Nick.
Thank you.
The County of Kern has provided notice that as a result of the declared federal, state, and local emergencies due to the COVID-19 pandemic and in light of the governor's orders, this Board of Supervisors meeting is not physically open to the public. Testimony and general public comment are accepted via email or voice message to the clerk of the board prior to today's meeting, and live comments via teleconference will be heard during the meeting. We'll begin by considering the consent agenda. All items listed with the CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the public wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove an item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence, with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. A member of the public may also comment on any closed session item. At this time, I will read the consent agenda item numbers. That is items 1 through 6 and item 9 on page 2, items 10 through 19 on page 3, 20 through 24 and item 26 on page 4, items 28 through 35 on page 5, items 36 through 43 on page 6, items 44 through 52 on page 7, items 53 through 61 on page 8, and items 62 and 63 on page 9. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on any consent agenda items?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we received an email from Fred Hawkins. This is concerning consent agenda item number 47 under Public Health Services. It's a short email. You all received it electronically, and you have a hard copy in front of you, but I will go ahead and read it. We respectfully request that agenda item CA 47 be pulled and tabled for further discussion. This proposed ambulance bid process has not been discussed with the EMS stakeholders and has a proposed time frame that severely limits or excludes open and fair competition for this contract, introducing a lengthy bid process for ground ambulance service at a time when the EMS system is operating under special procedures and rural providers are subsidizing the metropolitan service areas makes no sense. There is currently no threat to public safety or lack of service in EOA 11. Liberty Ambulance is currently under contract to serve the Cal City area and provides mutual aid to Boron, Mojave, and Rosamond. The county should delay this action and seek provider and stakeholder input before issuing a third RFP for EOA 11. Mr. Chairman, that concludes public comment on consent agenda items.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any board members wishing to have items removed for discussion? Okay. Next, yes, sir.
Could I ask our Director of Public Health if he would like to respond to that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Constantine.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for just a few minutes of your time. This item before you is a bid proposal that the state has mandated that we do. We've gone out to bid 2 previous times without any successful bidders, so this is not anything new. The state is aggressively asking that we pursue this process. I think in the email it indicates that this item has not been discussed by stakeholders. The RFP process is intentional so that we don't have those discussions before it goes out to bid. And then finally, I think there was a comment made about the duration of how long the bid is open for. We are proposing for 60 days, for 2 months, which we think is completely adequate enough to garner any interest in addition to the 2 previous times it's been open for bid. So hopefully that provides a little context for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other, is there any board comment on these items?
Mr. Chairman, this is Supervisor Scrivener.
Yes, sir.
I just want to announce that I'll be recusing myself from item number 50 because my wife is employed with Adventist Health. I will be voting on the rest of the consent agenda, but Madam Clerk, please record my abstention from item number 50. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Scrivener. And I also will be recusing myself from items 33 and number 51 because of my wife's employment with CSUB. So I'll also be voting on the rest of the agenda besides those 2 items. Okay, perfect. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, we need a roll call vote for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Peters?
Aye.
Supervisor Scrivener?
Aye.
Supervisor Maggard?
Aye.
Supervisor Couch?
Yes.
And Supervisor Perez is absent, so the motion is approved. 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Okay, our first off consent item, the board will now consider item number 7, public presentations. Excuse me. Let me find my spot on that. Okay, this portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct the staff to place a matter on a future agenda. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes, and before speaking, we ask that you please state and spell your name before making your presentation. Madam Clerk, is there anybody wishing to address the board?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We do have Emma De La Rosa from Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. She provided a letter which your board was provided yesterday via email. You also have a hard copy in front of you. And Ms. De La Rosa is waiting in the queue. So Ms. De La Rosa, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you have 2 minutes to address the board.
Good morning, Kern County Board of Supervisors. My name is Emma De La Rosa, Policy Advocate with the Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. I want to begin by thanking the Public Health Department, Mr. Constantine and Bryn, for we're working toward vaccinating our community. We acknowledge the complexities of implementing this vaccination system, and we acknowledge it, and we thank you for your work during this hard time. We want to provide a few strategies for the Public Health Department, and we are also asking the board to commit to some of these strategies to help with reducing the risk of COVID-19 in our most vulnerable communities, and also ensure that there is an equitable process, vaccination distribution process. So first of all, yesterday we all know Governor Newsom announced that the vaccines will now be available for individuals who are at a higher risk of exposure due to their occupation. This does include healthcare staff, first responders, farm workers, and agricultural workers, teachers, and school staff. So we are strongly urging that Kern County prioritize farm workers and our agricultural workers for the vaccine. It is important that the county prioritize state-allocated vaccines for individuals who do not have another avenue to obtain the vaccine. In addition, food and agricultural workers are at a higher risk of contracting COVID-19 due to the nature of the work and the inability to social distance. We are also strongly recommending that the Public Health Department and the County Ag Commissioners work together to disseminate at the work sites general information on the vaccine and information on how to access the vaccine. There needs to be another way to access the appointment center aside from making appointments online. In addition, part of the prioritization plan must also include dedicated time slots for agricultural and food workers to ensure that appointments are available outside of conventional work hours. I know that the vaccination site just began, and I know that right now the hours are currently from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm hoping that those hours will be extended. As you may be aware, the farm workers work from sunrise sometimes until sundown, and sometimes on Saturdays, Monday through Saturday. So we want to make sure that there are additional work hours for that. Additional appointments for farm workers.
Ms. De La Rosa, we appreciate your comments, but we're pretty well over the 2-minute mark now, so if you could bring them to a close, we would appreciate that.
Sure. So you have them listed on the document in front of you. If you can please discuss the possibility of funding these strategies during today's meeting, I will greatly appreciate that, and I will be following up with the Public Health Department in regards to these strategies, and I look forward to working with you all to help with the outreach and implementing these strategies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anybody else wishing to address the board?
No, that concludes public comment for this morning.
Thank you. For our next item, we'll consider item number 8, board member announcements and reports. And I'd like to begin by asking our Public Health Director, Mr. Matt Constantine, to provide an update on the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again, and members of the board. We are going to do a little bit more in depth this morning about what we are doing to address and fight COVID-19 in the county. As you can imagine, and as you are aware, we are taking on quite a bit of additional duties. In addition to our contact tracing and all of our work on testing, we are being asked now to take on additional roles with vaccinations. Our employees are being stretched obviously very thin. We are working very hard. They're not just sitting around smelling the flowers. These guys are working really hard, and I've been very impressed with all that they've been doing. We want to talk a little bit about vaccinations this morning. As you've been told, this is an ever-changing dynamic. The state has been issuing different directives. In fact, at 9:30 this morning, they're supposed to issue some additional information about priorities and vaccinations. So we quickly try to move through that. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. I do want to mention, though, that because of the increased workload and the demands on the department, and now with the objective of standing up a vaccination clinic, we have asked for the Emergency Operations Center to be activated. They are helping tremendously. They are running that mass vaccination clinic. They are running our call center that we've established out there. They're helping to run the public outreach and media campaign. They have been a tremendous resource to us, as this is an ever changing and demanding environment. With your board's indulgence, I would like to turn it over to Bryn Kerrigan, and then I would like Tom Beckett to walk us through some of the clinic flow and pictures.
Great, thank you. Mr. Constantine?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Bryn Kerrigan. I'm the Assistant Director of Kern County Public Health.
Good morning.
On Thursday, December 3rd, Governor Newsom announced a regional stay-at-home order that grouped counties into 5 regions within the state and used intensive care unit, better known as ICU, capacity as a metric for implementation. Kern County was placed in the San Joaquin Valley region. The regional stay-at-home order went into effect December 6th in Kern County and was to remain in effect until the regional ICU capacity was projected to fall below 15% in a 4-week period. The state announced yesterday that the remaining 3 regions, including the San Joaquin Valley region in which Kern County resides, had ICU projections for February 21st, 2021 above 15% and specifically at 22.3%. Because of this, the regional stay-at-home order was lifted effective January 24th, 2021. Counties were assigned to their blueprint tier upon exiting the regional stay-at-home order. Kern was placed in the purple tier. The lift of the regional stay-at-home order now allows the following to occur. Restaurants may remain open for outdoor dining. Certain low-risk youth sports competitions may resume. Campgrounds may reopen. Family entertainment centers are allowed to open outdoors. Retail stores may increase capacity from 20% to 25%. Standalone grocery stores may increase capacity from 35% to 50%. And personal services, including nail salons, hair salons, barber shops, tattoo shops, and massage facilities, may reopen indoors with modifications. Additionally, the limited stay-at-home order, which was essentially a curfew, has been lifted as well. Our call center has been experiencing an extraordinary number of calls. Prior to the COVID pandemic, our call center handled anywhere between 200 and 400 calls on a daily basis. Since COVID, our call center typically handles between 500 and 800 calls on a daily basis. Since January 19th, our call volume spiked to over 1,000 calls per day, and yesterday, 1,937 calls were received in our call center, resulting in the highest number of calls in a single day we have ever handled. We are trying to quickly adapt to these unprecedented increases. However, we do know that some of our callers experienced some significant hold times yesterday. Additionally, we've been working with the county's Emergency Operations Center, who quickly set up a dedicated fairgrounds appointment call center to relieve some of the call volume from the public health call center. Temporarily, 13 county staff were redirected from their regular county job to answer the phones and make appointments. Shortly after deploying this separate call center, more than 150 callers were in the queue, and the volume of calls remained consistent throughout the rest of the day. More than 600 appointments were scheduled through this call center, even though it wasn't deployed until afternoon. The EOC is assigning additional staff today to the call center. We kindly ask for patience as we adapt to this new demand. We have a meeting with the state on Wednesday to review a system that can be deployed locally to allow for online registration and appointments, which should alleviate some of the demand on the system. The state's COVID vaccination plan is prioritized based on high-risk groups that are defined in several phases as well as tiers within those phases. Phase 1A, healthcare workers and those who are 65 years or older are currently eligible for vaccination in Kern County. While we feel that a substantial portion of the demand for vaccination in healthcare workers has been met, there is still a significant demand for vaccination in our 65 and older population. Yesterday afternoon, the governor announced that there will be a single statewide movement through the tiered system and that emergency services, food and agriculture workers, and teachers and staff would be prioritized. This announcement will significantly increase demand on our system with no additional vaccine supply available to offset this change. We are currently working on how to adapt to this change. The department has launched a robust website specifically related to COVID vaccine. On our vaccine website is a map of community vaccine providers, along with their contact information. There are approximately 90 providers throughout Kern County administering vaccines. Additionally, last week, in coordination with the county's Emergency Operations Center and help and staffing from multiple county departments, a county-run mass vaccination clinic was opened as a soft launch. With a plan to administer 1,200 vaccines during the 4-day soft launch, we actually administered 1,545 doses of vaccine. After the first day of the soft launch, operations were running so smoothly that an additional 100 appointments were added to the remaining 3 days of the clinic. Yesterday, we announced the opening of our mass vaccination clinic. With a plan to administer 2,000 vaccines between Wednesday and Saturday, residents who meet the eligibility criteria and are interested in obtaining a vaccination should call 661-868-0165. Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I'd like to ask Tom Beckett to review the mass vaccination efforts at the fairgrounds.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Tom Beckett. And I'm the Technology Services Manager with Public Health. So I'd like to go through kind of our plan at the fairgrounds and give you some pictures and a layout of how it's going to work. So we set out with a goal to vaccinate 920,000 people twice. This is going to be done through a combination of efforts. The first one being through community vaccinators. There are currently about 90 of those throughout the county that are participating in providing vaccines. In addition, we're going to have a large-scale county response at the fairgrounds where we're going to have both walk-up and drive-through capabilities with an end goal of 5,000 vaccines a day, running 7 days a week at 12 hours a day to do that. Next slide, please. So we're going to roll out the mass vaccination in phases. These phases are controlled by the availability of vaccine from the state to Kern County. So we're already in phase 1 right now. We had the soft launch last week where we did the 300 a day and then moved to 400 a day. We're going to start tomorrow doing 2,000 over the next 4 days. That's 500 each day. We're going to run Wednesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. As more vaccine becomes available, we will grow to the capacity of 1,000 a day, continuing to work with the walk-ups and growing to 5 days a week and 8 hours a day to meet that need. As we continue to get more vaccine beyond that, we'll introduce a drive-through component. We'll grow this to 2,000 vaccines a day through a combination of both walk-up and drive-through. At that time, we'll stay with the 5 days a week, 8 hour a day model. When the vaccine is widely available, we will open the site to its full capacity, which will be both walk-up and drive-through, 5,000 vaccines a day, operating at 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So this is an overview of the current walk-up component that is in place now. It's situated at the main gates of the fairgrounds. People enter through the front. They come to a screening area where we make sure that they're in the eligible tiers and that they meet all the requirements to be vaccinated currently. Then they're vaccinated, and then they are brought over to one of the buildings where they are observed for a period of time. One thing that's different about this vaccine as opposed to things like flu vaccine is there's a component that after you're vaccinated, we need to observe you for either 15 to 30 minutes to make sure there's no adverse reactions or anything. Next slide. So this is we call it document review. This is the area where you come in, we review your form. There's a questionnaire that you're given that asks questions like if you've had allergic reactions in the past, that type of history. So it's reviewed there just to make sure that you aren't at risk for any any allergic reactions or any adverse things to happen. So once you pass that piece, it's on to the vaccination stations. We currently have 6 vaccination stations set up. There are teams of nurses and staff in each one of these that are performing vaccinations. The plan for this is that it will grow. There's currently 6. There will be as many as 12 on the walk-up and as many as 14 on the drive-through as well. So after the vaccination, they go into one of the buildings where we have it cordoned off, where we seat people based upon time. They are seated in this section for 15 minutes. We have paramedics standing by to observe and respond if there's any adverse reactions to any of the vaccinations. After the 15 minutes, assuming that there's not any complications, then they're released out the front gate where they entered. So as I mentioned, right now we're doing the walk-up component. There is also a drive-through component that is in progress now. The EOC has been a huge help in trying to stand this piece up. There are improvements that need to be made to various portions of the fairgrounds in order to make that happen. What you're looking at here is a drawing where we're setting up 14 lanes of incoming traffic to feed the 14 drive-through vaccination stations that are along the bottom. And then on the right-hand side towards the exit is where we will park cars in lanes where they will be held for 15 minutes, and we can have our medical staff observe them and make sure that there are no issues before they are released to leave the site. So it will function very much the same way that the walk-up traffic does, only in a drive-through version. So as I mentioned, a lot of this is already in progress. So this is a picture of that Bell Terrace parking lot. The Kern County Roads Department and Public Works has been working on this for several days now, grading, leveling, preparing to put some blacktop in key areas, removing fences, getting this to the point that we'll be able to run the large-scale operation that is going to be needed. In addition, there's improvements that have been taking place inside of the fairgrounds. This is a picture of the front entrance. It was identified that there were some tripping hazards. We're focusing right now, among others, but to a vulnerable population of elderly people, and moving them in and out their safety is a high concern. So we're alleviating some of those issues that we've identified. Much with this one, this is another area where they pass from the vaccination stations to where they go for that observation. There were uneven areas, there were possible tripping hazards. Those are also being taken care of. So in conclusion, the site is open. We're open at a capacity that meets the amount of vaccine that is currently allotted to us. We're quickly as possible building this out so that when more vaccine is allocated to Kern County, we will be ready, and we will be ready to grow at whatever the pace is that vaccine increases to us.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I might have missed this earlier in the presentation, but are there any volunteer opportunities for individuals or organizations that are wanting to help with that effort out there?
Yes, there are definitely volunteer operations or opportunities. There are some volunteers that are doing now. We're going through the KMRC core through public health in order for them to get into that queue currently.
Okay.
But as this grows, there is definitely going to be more and more opportunities for volunteers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we are relying solely on county employees really to operate most of it. So HR has been fantastic, and we've had a lot of the county employees that have stood up and said, we want to help, and they bring some fantastic attitudes, and they're fun, and they're trying to help, and it's really added to the whole experience. So we're very grateful for all the county employees, because public health was just plumb out of employees. We didn't have any more, and they've been fantastic to stand up and assist.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Constantine. I know you guys have been dealing with a lot, and these are some tremendous efforts that you guys are making.
Yes, sir.
Much appreciated. Okay, are there any other questions from the board?
Can you give us that number again that they would call to make an appointment? Is it 868-0165?
That's correct. It's 661-868-0165.
Okay, and in your different phases, when you go from, I see the first one, it's 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Phase 2 is 8 hours a day. What would be the starting and ending times?
So those aren't set yet.
Okay.
Part of that process will be to see where the heaviest response is in our existing model.
In other words, if people want to come before work or after work.
Right,
you're
so
gonna
we will
figure it out.
extend
Okay.
those hours to where we will meet the greatest need.
So
Whether
you'll
that
do
be
that
earlier or
with-
later, or both an hour early
You're
and
going
an
to do
hour
that
later.
with phase 2, 3, and 4?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. CEO, Ryan Alsop, did you need to buzz in?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add, thank Mr. Beckett for his presentation, Matt. We are, as a county family, circling around public health and getting our house squarely around and in support of public health's effort to roll these vaccines out. And I did want to thank the men and women who are staffing our emergency operations center and all the county staff that are reporting out there for duty. As you know, our EOC is operated and controlled by our fire department. So I'd like to thank our fire chief and the command structure that has been put in place to oversee this effort, which is led by fire personnel at the very top. Obviously, Ms. Armstrong, Geo Armstrong, is a fixture in the EOC and the backbone there. But I would like to give a shout out and a thank you to all of the hard work the EOC is putting in to get all of this developed and running strong. It is a daily effort. There are multiple meetings going on every day with staff all across the county, and they are dedicated, and they've all rolled their sleeves up, and this is priority one for our county going forward for the next many weeks and potentially months.
Thank you, Mr. Alsop. Supervisor Maggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to take a few minutes to walk through a few of the implications of what we've talked about this morning and thank staff for their presentation to us. First, I want to tell the public that Matt and Bren, we certainly have chosen the right person in Tom Beckett. He has a great deal of responsibility. Mr. Beckett, I don't know what you were like when you were a kid, but if your parents are still living when this settles, regardless of what you did as a young man, they're going to be proud of you for the job that you're doing. So you've done a fine job. I visited the fairgrounds. I want to give you a sense of what it's like there. The day I went was last Friday. It was pouring rain. There was hail pelting the ground, bouncing off the concrete. And these folks were sitting there in their array of coats and hats, getting pounded by the weather, waiting for anybody who walked up to the gate to make sure they got served. They are completely dedicated to the cause. They're enthusiastic, they're capable, they're equipped. It really is the greatest mobilization of county resources I've seen in my time in government throughout my, I've always had two careers. That is a businessman, a CPA, and that is a servant of the people in elected positions. And I've never seen anything like this. So I cannot thank them enough for the outstanding effort that they have and the commitment that they've exhibited to be able to do this. And I'm confident that we're doing every single thing we can, and that is a complete, all of that is intended to say thank you to the wonderful people who are doing that. So we clearly want to make sure that's the case. I think it's important that we emphasize that phone number, the 868-661-868-0165. Thank you, Supervisor Couch, for asking about that, because not everybody uses a computer, particularly our sweet elderly folks who, that's just not in their wheelhouse anymore. So let's make sure we have that good to go for everyone. Then making sure that we are doing everything that we can. I'm confident that we are doing that. But I want to just pause for a second to say something that is a frustration to us, and that is that the rules of the game constantly change. And it is difficult to maintain our focus. One week we are focused on health equity census tracts, because that's the means by which we're being judged, and that's the means by which our economy can continue to be ongoing. And we also have people, of course, who need to be served in those. So we are focused on that. The next week, we're focused on something else. This week, we're focused on vaccinations. And some of it's the nature of the pandemic, but I just want to speak directly to President Biden to Mr. Schumer, Ms. Pelosi, and Governor Newsom. You now control the executive and the legislative branch of both the federal government and the state of California government. We need you to be on the same page. We need you to give us one set of priorities and let us pursue those, and don't change every other day what those priorities are. They need to make sure that we have enough vaccines. We have the capability. It isn't just our 5,000 at the fairgrounds. It would take us a year to vaccinate everyone if we only had that as our outlet. But Omni, Clinica Sierra Vista, Centric, all the hospitals, Kaiser, every opportunity there is to vaccinate people is going to be done. We'll get it done, but we must have vaccines to give out. So to that group of people that I just mentioned, please make sure we have vaccines. The data that's behind the scenes is not being revealed to us. And what is being revealed to us is not clear or precise. So please give us good numbers. For example, those numbers today indicate that that we may not be giving out all the vaccine that we're receiving. Well, we are giving out all the vaccine that we're receiving. We're receiving in a week what we need per day to be able to vaccinate this many people. So, and then who's going to tell somebody's grandmother that they can't get their second shot because we gave it out to somebody yesterday? If they've had their first shot, some vaccine is being held back to give that second shot. So it is imperative that we have one message and one strategy, and that be implemented thoroughly, and we need more vaccines. So that is not political. This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with saving the lives of our people. So all those branches of government are controlled by the few people that I just mentioned. We ought to be able to accomplish that. So hope that we can. One of the other essential things that I think would help us is for us to be able to move the vaccine around within the organizations. For example, if Centric and the Heart Hospital receive vaccines, they should be able to move that to any doctor's office within their network to be able to distribute those shots. There are great barriers now, paperwork barriers and restrictions on how that can be done. So it's just important that we break down all those barriers so we can be as efficient as we can be as creative as we can be. But at the end of the day, I am 100% confident in Mr. Beckett, Ms. Kerrigan, Mr. Constantine, and the whole plethora of people, the whole range of people that are out there making sure that this gets done. We have the right team in the right place at the right time. So congratulations to you. Thank you for doing your dead level best every day to save the lives of the people that we serve. And I'll always be grateful to you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. Okay, are there any other questions for Matt Constantine or for Public Health? Okay, I would like to ask Jim Zervis to come up and give us an update regarding CARES Act funding. Thank you, Mr. Zervis.
Thank you, Chairman Peters and members of the board. It's my pleasure this morning to take the opportunity to provide an update on the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Program Fund that the county's been administering for the past, 9 months or so at this point. Just as a reminder, the Coronavirus Relief Fund came about through the CARES Act. It was established with $150 billion. And that money was to go to support state and local government in their responding, from a financial standpoint, in their responding to COVID-19. Kern County received $157 million of that. Jurisdictions, in order to be eligible to receive a direct allocation at that time, had to have a population of over 500,000. So Kern County was the only eligible governmental entity in the county to receive that direct allocation. And so of the $157 million, those funds, or really the $150 billion, are intended to be spent in accordance to three criteria. One, that these expenditures are necessary to deal with COVID-19 and the impacts of COVID-19, that they weren't in the government's budget prior to that, prior to the March 27th date of the emergency, and that they were incurred between March 1st, 2020 and now December 31st, 2021. That date had been December 30th, 2020 and was extended. Upon receipt, the county developed an initial utilization plan to guide the investment of these funds, and the Board of Supervisors approved that plan on May 5th, 2020. That initial utilization plan has been amended several times through the pandemic to direct resources to changing needs and impacts of the pandemic, and really centered around those three concentric circles in areas of local government support, small business support, and safety net services. Some of the activities that were conducted utilizing these funds in those categories are shown in front of you here. From a local government standpoint, this is the largest category. It includes cost of public health response, countywide testing, county staffing and PPE, reimbursements to cities and special districts for their costs and activities, the alternative care site at the fairgrounds, and now countywide vaccinations, ICU staffing, and temporary isolation units. So those are all in that government category. From the small business support, we focus mainly on the forgivable loan program, the Kern Recovers Small Business Forgivable Loan Program, nonprofit grants, and then PPE support to our local small businesses. And in the safety net services category, we identified the isolation of homeless and support of the homeless community, housing for the harvest, the food to door program, which we'll talk about a little more in a moment, and then community PPE, so distributing for the protection of the community, face masks in particular. So those are really the activities that have been funded with your coronavirus relief funds. And at some level, most of these programs have come before your board for approval and implementation. So just reviewing a few of the main programs that we've worked on and have come to conclusion at this time. So the Kern Recovers Small Business Forgivable Loan Program provided $30 million in direct funding of forgivable loans, benefiting 938 individual businesses throughout the county across 255 industries. So the average loan size was a little over $30,000, and it took about just under 20 days from application to funding to get that money into the business's hands. We're currently working with all those businesses through the forgiveness phase of this program, and I'm happy to report that process is going well, and this program was very well received. Following up on that, the Kern Recovers nonprofit grant program was launched. We ended up providing $730,000 in direct grants to 111 different nonprofit organizations throughout the county. So those grants were issued in increments of $5,000, $10,000, or $20,000, depending on the size of the nonprofit and the financial impact they demonstrated related to COVID-19. The Small Business PPE Support Program. This program was approved and implemented through your board's action, and it centers on utilization of existing county facilities that were closed for COVID. So we took libraries, we took ETR facilities, and other maybe veterans halls, administration buildings that were closed because of COVID, and utilizing staff that would have been working in the libraries and weren't working. We implemented this program to deliver PPE countywide through 13 different locations on a reservation system. That program ran for 214 days and had a cost of about $3 million, which was a little more than half of our estimated budget in the beginning at $5 million. But through this program, we've been able to impact and deliver product to over 4,200 individual businesses, unique businesses, over 7,800 actually deliveries of product. protecting 182,000 employees, private employees throughout the county. And really what this looks like is containers, 156,000 containers of disinfecting wipes, 2.9 million face masks, and 5 million sets of gloves delivered to local small businesses at no cost. That program is coming to a conclusion at the end of January. So we're really pleased with the impact that we've been able to make here, utilizing, again, existing county locations and existing county staff. Community PPE support program. So unlike the business PPE support program, we partnered on this program with Community Action Partnership of Kern. They operate a number of programs designed to, that impact a wide variety of constituents throughout the county. And the goal here was to utilize that distribution network for their existing programs and get face masks into the communities at no cost to participants. So if you went to a CAP-K service, or you got a product from them, or you went to WIC and you bought some groceries, you would be handed face masks. And we were able to distribute 8.7 million 3-ply face masks through this. So we have 920,000 people in Kern County. So you can see the impact at 8.7 million 3-ply face masks into the community. I want to give some kudos here to General Services in the purchasing department, because they did a competitive bidding process here with over 100 bidders to provide these face masks, and got a tremendous value at just, at 3.6 cents per face mask, which literally saved the difference between the high bid and the low bid was hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it shows the power of buying in bulk and the ability to use a competitive process to get the best value. The Food to Door program was also a partnership with CAP-K. In this program, we delivered 50-pound boxes of food to seniors. So if you recall, the goal here was to help seniors isolate by reducing the numbers of trips to the grocery store by providing some food directly to them on a reoccurring monthly basis. And so these were 50-pound boxes. It included non-perishable items such as rice, flour, pasta, those types of things. But in addition to that, it also included fresh fruits and vegetables and things that CAP-K had access through their other food delivery programs. So through this program, it ran from August to the end of December, delivered almost 20,000 of those boxes. For just under 1 million pounds of food delivered to people in need. And hopefully keeping those people safe by staying isolated at home and reducing trips to places like the grocery store. So those are just a few of the overall programs that I had on my previous slide in the 3 different categories. Overall, the Coronavirus Relief Fund balance stood at the end of the year of the $157 million, $102.64 million of that has been spent. We have another $18.7 million that's encumbered, and then the remaining $36.22 million is assigned. And that kind of brings us to what we're doing now. Currently, we're focused in utilizing these funds in following along with the presentation you heard from Public Health in dealing with vaccinations and vaccination clinics, testing sites, ICU staffing, and the alternative care site readiness. So those are really the main focus of the remaining funds are being poured into these efforts. As I said, the initial plan was set up back in May, and now we have a current plan, and I've shown those side by side by categories. The stars on this page highlight the priorities that I just went over, that being testing, vaccinations, IC nursing support, and the ACS. In total, the governmental support category has increased from $108 million to $119.34 million. The small business support category was at $35 million, and we ended up at $33.73 million. and that's the loans, grants, and PPE support. And then the safety net services, being unsheltered populations and PPE support, food to home, housing for the harvest, those types of items, was at $4 million, actually increased to $4.49 million. We had $10 million that was in kind of an other to be determined category, making the original plan $157 million. That has been since allocated, and we currently stand at $157.56 million, the difference being interest earned on those funds while they're in the county treasury. So I hope that gives you an update of where we are in utilization of those funds and how some of those programs that you've approved have been implemented and been successful. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Zervis. I know this has been a difficult time, not just for residents, but for, especially for businesses and nonprofits. And so I wanted to acknowledge you and our CAO, Ryan Alsop, and all the hard work your department's done in distributing these and helping people in Kern County weather the storm. So much appreciated. I see, Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just another example of the report we just received is another example of the 100% mobilization of the county to make sure this gets done. And just as I said about public health and all of those folks in the EOC and everywhere that are helping on that side, we're doing the same thing on this side. So thank you, Mr. Zervis, Mr. Alsop, and all the rest of our support staff that is getting this done.
Great. Supervisor Couch, Supervisor Scrivener, any comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Zervis. And next, I would like to ask our Supervisor Maggard and Supervisor Scrivener if they have anything that they would like to add from the ad hoc committee.
I believe we've done that
okay,
already.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
You got it. Okay, next is item number 25 under the County Administrative Office.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I have a couple of things I'd like to do under board member announcements that were separate from that.
Okay, I apologize.
No problem. I apologize too.
Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you. I should have said this under the heading of our report on the coronavirus, but I just wanted to tell the public that there's other good things that are happening in the community. There has been a full corona study of ways to treat those that are already infected with the COVID virus. This study's been ongoing in the background of our community for some time, and I know that Dr. Bill Baker, a friend of mine who has been at the center of this effort, he shared with me that they have discovered that this cold corona and the use of something called colchicine I think as I recollect, it was originally a gout medicine, but it has proven to be very helpful in increasing or reducing the need for hospitalization by 25% and the death result from the disease by as much as 50%. So there are many, many good things like that going on in our community. Okay, second, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I have a referral to make to staff this morning. Our Kern County veterans have given their all to serve their country. Now is the time for us to recognize their service with a new state-of-the-art veterans clinic that they so rightly deserve. Congress originally authorized the construction of a new facility back in 2010, but our veterans have been forced to wait ever since. In 2018, a lease was awarded by the Veterans Administration to construct a $40 million facility near the area of Olive Drive and Knudsen in the city of Bakersfield, which is also located in the 3rd District. Unfortunately, the project has been delayed, most recently by an appeal filed by competing real estate interests. Our veterans have been disserved by these delays and must not take a back seat to someone trying to make a buck on a real estate deal. Healthcare delayed is healthcare denied. This is why I would like to refer this morning to our CAO and our County Veteran Services Department that they work together to draft a letter in support of the newly proposed location, to oppose the appeal of the mitigated negative declaration with the city of Bakersfield, to oppose the appeal related to the site plan review that is ongoing at the Bakersfield Planning Commission. The new site has undergone a proper review by and is also backed by the Veterans Administration. The construction of the new Veterans Clinic is long overdue. Most importantly, the new clinic will offer some services that are not currently available. First, they will dramatically expand mental health services, which is vital to those, particularly those dealing with PTSD and depression. 2, there will be a completely new telemedicine department. 3, there will be a complete audiology department. 4, a complete eye clinic. 5, a complete rehabilitation and prosthetic clinic, including indoor and outdoor exercise areas. And 6th, but not last, a new dental clinic. So there are many new services available to our veterans that they cannot get in Kern County today. They'll be able to get once this clinic is done, so we should not delay its progress. Our precious veterans will be well served by the new site for its easy highway access and nearby emergency response capabilities. The Knutson site characteristics far exceed those of any of the competing sites. Our veterans will be provided with a state-of-the-art site developed with patient convenience, safety, and most importantly, a healing environment that is in conformance with all of the VA's goals of providing quality care to veterans. Besides being in the 3rd District, the Knutson site is the right choice, the right location, and right for our veterans. My Chief of Staff, Jeff Flores, is available to assist our staff in any of background or necessary information they need. I'd like to thank Congressman McCarthy for his leadership and support for Kern County's veterans and helping push for this new Veterans Clinic site. So I would like this morning to formally refer to staff the drafting of a letter of support for this project to the City of Bakersfield, the Bakersfield City Council, and the Bakersfield Planning Commission. And I have a copy of this referral that I can give Madam Clerk and our CAO for him to distribute to our Veteran Services Department. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that referral to staff. And if that needs to be made in the form of a motion, I'd be happy to do that. So I would move that we make that referral to staff.
Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. Is there a second?
Does that need a second? Could you bring back some information before we act on that to our next meeting? I'm not as familiar as you are with that, and I just want a little information before we move with that, but I'm probably with you on that. I just don't understand the status of it at this point.
Okay.
Can I interrupt for one moment?
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Maggard, you could make this request and have this item placed on the next agenda.
That was what I was anticipating, is that it would come back to be voted on by the staff, or by the board, once the letter's been drafted by the staff.
And the board letter accompanying that letter would have the background information that Supervisor Couch is looking for.
Okay, and is a motion needed to?
Not on a request.
Okay, perfect.
So
Okay.
we'll make sure it's on the next agenda.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Maggard. Are there any other members wishing to speak before we move to our next item? Okay, our next item is item number 25. And before we address that, I believe Supervisor Scribner wanted to speak to that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Yes, I'm going to recuse myself on this item. There's a component to it that deals with ICU bed nursing contracts, and since presumably some of that may have to do with Adventist Health, my wife works for Adventist Health, so I'm going to recuse myself from this item. I'll be leaving the meeting, and then staff will let me back in for item number 27. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Scrivener. Okay, the board will now consider item number 25, the proposed status of the CARES Act Relief Fund Utilization Plan and request for approval of proposed revision to provide costs related to vaccination clinics, increased ICU bed capacity, and COVID-19 testing. I would like to call on Mr. Ryan Alsop for a report on this item.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We're going to have Mr. Zerfus, who is handling all of our CARES Act related items, report on this for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Peters and members of the Board of Supervisors. The purpose of this item is to follow up on the presentation that I gave a few moments ago regarding the status of the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and really to recommend some changes to the utilization plan that's been implemented. And primarily, these changes just reallocate unspent funds to those four categories that are priorities right now, being testing, ICU nurses, and vaccination sites. And so the proposed amendment to the utilization plan would allocate $5 million to the vaccination effort, and that is funding primarily for what's going on at the fairgrounds right now. It would provide $2.5 million in additional monies for COVID-related testing, $600,000 in additional funding for the ICU nursing and ICU staffing, and then about $466,000 to reimburse county departments for their costs related to COVID. The funding for this comes from the unallocated balance within the utilization plan, as well as small amounts that are left over from those programs we discussed that have been completed. So a full analysis of the plan and the actual spent versus the current plan and what's proposed is included as attachment A to your board letter, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zervis. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, with that, Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on this item?
Mr. Chairman, no, we do not have any public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. And then I would like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Supervisor Peters?
Aye.
Supervisor Maggard?
Aye.
Supervisor Couch?
Yes.
And Supervisor Perez is absent. Supervisor Scribner has abstained. The vote is approved, 3 ayes.
Thank you. And do we need to pause for a moment while you let Supervisor Scribner back into the meeting? Okay, perfect.
Mr. Chairman, I just texted Supervisor Scribner, so he should be coming back into the meeting momentarily. I'll let you know when he's here.
Okay, great. The next item for the board to consider is item number 27 under the CAO's office. And that is the retroactive authorization for the CAO to sign award terms for the U.S. Department of Treasury's Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And I'd like to call on our CAO, Ryan Alsop.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, appreciate that. Members of the board, again, Mr. Zervis from our office, our COO, will handle this item.
Thank you.
Yes, Chairman Peters and members of the board, on December 27th, 2020, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021 was signed into law. Included in that act was the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, making available $25 billion to assist households that are unable to pay rent and utilities due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The funds are provided directly to states, U.S. territories, local governments, and Indian tribes. Eligible local governments have to be over 200,000 in population, and that funding is made available on a per capita basis. So in this case, both the County of Kern and the City of Bakersfield are eligible recipients of a portion of these funds. In order to secure the county's portion of funding, the CAO had to sign and submit the attached funding award terms document by January 12th, 2021. There was a tremendous pressure to get this money out into the community as quickly as possible, and so that deadline was fairly short noticed. That was done, and that document was submitted, and that's the retroactive approval that we're asking for your authorization to do that. Kern County received $15,343,270. And that money came in last week, so that money's been received. We estimate that the city's allocation is going to be about $11.4 million for a total local funding available for rental and utility assistance of $26.7 million. So that's a significant amount. We are working currently with the Housing Authority of the County of Kern to develop and administer this program. It is our intent to keep this program as broad and accessible as allowed under the federal statute and the guidelines. We are also coordinating our effort with the City of Bakersfield with the goal that we would have the same program design, eligibility criteria, and administration. So similar to how we launched the last mortgage and rental assistance program in conjunction with the city, so that we don't duplicate efforts or have competing programs, we're taking a similar approach here and are working with the city to have a unified approach and a unified program in this way. The U.S. Department of Treasury is developing specific guidance on how these funds can be used. And some of that's explicit in the statute and some of its interpretation, and the U.S. Treasury Department has been issuing guidance and FAQs to help guide that. It's based on that we're developing the scope of the program right now with the Housing Authority, but we are seeking approval for your board, subject to County Council approval, to enter into an agreement with the Housing Authority to get this program implemented and launched as quickly as possible. So this program will generally be able to pay for rental and utility assistance. So and for a period of 12 months, plus the possibility of an additional 3 months if it's a housing stability issue. It first prioritizes payments in arrears, going back to the beginning of the pandemic and making sure that those payments are caught up before awarding future months of support. And in the case that it does go into the future, it takes it 3 months at a time. So you would qualify for 3 months, and then you'd have to reapply or requalify for the next 3 months. Some of the details are still being determined from the Treasury Department, as I mentioned, but that's generally how it works. And to be eligible, according to the statute, participants would have to be 80% or less of area median income, have qualified for unemployment or experienced reduction in household income, incurred significant costs, or experienced other financial hardships due directly or indirectly to COVID-19. And one or more individuals in that house have to demonstrate that they have a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability. So that's some general information about the program. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Today, again, we're seeking approval for authorization for what was already done to apply for this program and to enter into agreement with the Housing Authority to implement.
Great, thank you, Mr. Zervis. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on this item?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we do have Emma De La Rosa from Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability waiting to address your board on this item. Ms. De La Rosa, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Hello, members of the board. This is Emma De La Rosa again. Thanks to Mr. Zervis and Mr. Alta for their quick response in submitting the award terms form for this program. As the county prepares for another round of funding, the following needs to be addressed. Administrative capacity, let's start there. The Housing Authority needs additional support to process the amount of applications. Applications are taking a considerable amount of time to be processed, and phone calls are not being answered. It is evident from the number of applications that were left unprocessed early this year that the Housing Authority needs additional support. We recommend that the Housing Authority and the county partner with community-based organizations to help distribute some of those funds, and also maybe partner with the superintendent of schools to train the Family Resource Center staff to help complete those applications. I'm hearing a lot of feedback on my end. I hope that everyone can hear me.
I'm hearing you fine, Ms. De La Rosa.
Okay, thank you. In addition, there were very minimal outreach efforts during the rental and mortgage assistance program, and the deadline for submitting an application was poorly shown for the community. I asked that the Housing Authority improve in those efforts, and again, share the application with the flyers with CBOs, with the Kern County Superintendent of Schools, maybe Kern County Network for Children, in addition to sharing those flyers at the vaccination point of distribution sites. And lastly, again, immigration status should not be an issue during this round of funding. There are no eligibility criteria in regards to immigration status. And I would love your commitment to implement some of these strategies if possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any further public comments?
No, sir, that concludes public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the board?
I move staff's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Madam Clerk, we have a roll call vote.
Supervisor Peters,
Aye.
Supervisor Scribner,
Aye.
Supervisor Maggard,
Aye.
Supervisor Couch,
Yes.
and Supervisor Perez is absent. The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Having no more items to consider in open session, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session to consider items 65, that is under the County Administrative Office, Public Employee Appointment and Recruitment. I wanted to note that item 64 has been withdrawn. We will also be considering items 66 through 68 from the County Council's office. And do I need to read those titles? Okay, perfect. Okay, with that, without objection, we are adjourned. We will reconvene at 2 p.m.
Other federally approved document like a Real ID driver license or identification card. So get prepared at realid.dmv.ca